Thanks very much for joining us for today's edition of the Intermodal Logistics Podcast. I'm Kevin Baxter, joined by my co-host, Intech Logistics CEO, Rick Lagore. Hey, Rick.
Hey, good to be back.
And we're talking intermodal today, as we, it's in the name. Yes. We got to do it eventually here and there, right?
I was going to say intermodal podcast.
Yeah,
I think we're going to have it covered.
It's in a few different spots.
Yes.
Yeah. We're checking in as we have just crossed that halfway point of the year, and so it's a really good time to sort of see what people are thinking about how the industry's doing and what it's going to be doing going forward, and what that prognosis is. And joining us today to help with that is Bridget Dean, Associate Editor with Progressive Railroading. Bridget, thanks very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
So first of all, we always like, especially when it's the first time we've had a guest on, to have them tell us a little bit about themselves. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I came into Progressive Railroading about a year ago. So I'm pretty fresh to the entire logistics scene, the entire intermodal scene, everything like that. I graduated from college about 2 years ago on the dot now. And following, a quick summer internship and then a year as a daily newspaper reporter, I jumped into Progressive Railroading.
You mentioned that you're fresh into logistics. So since you've started, what's your sort of feeling been on how the industry is and sort of overall takeaways so far?
Sure. So going into a B2B industry magazine was quite the switch from daily news. There is quite a lot to learn. But in most cases, I found that people are really willing to talk about their work and really happy to share background information with me, which is necessary for me since I don't have a lot of that context that some people have if they've been in that industry for over a decade, 2 decades. Something I've heard over and over when conducting interviews myself is that there's so much to learn, and that has been accurate for me as well. Luckily, my colleagues here at Progressive Railroading, they've all been covering this industry way longer than me, and my interviewees too are also very happy to take time to explain things to me. That's one of my favorite things about being a journalist, actually, is that I'm always learning something. Another thing about the freight rail industry, or about freight and intermodal logistics in general, is that it's such a huge industry, and yet it goes so unnoticed.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of guests where that's sort of been an impression with the railroad in particular. It's there. People notice that the trains are going by, or if they get stopped at a crossing, they really notice that. But yeah, there is sort of that feeling that the general public is not as informed about the railroad, particularly as other kind of key aspects of transportation.
Yeah, and I'll take this a step further. And this came up in a conversation that we had with a potential client this morning. Is that on the intermodal side, a lot of people don't really understand what intermodal is, even if they're in the industry. So, for example, this group reached out to us because they wanted us to help manage their ocean freight. And we said, well, we do domestic intermodal. And they said, doesn't that mean you do ocean freight? No, that means we do domestic intermodal shipping, between U.S., Canada, Mexico. So even the people in the industry. So don't feel bad. People in the industry that have been in here for a long time don't fully understand what intermodal is. The other thing that they fall back on is, again, people that are in the industry but don't fully understand intermodal. When they think of intermodal, they also think of dray. And they don't think about the trains being involved, and you're doing a long haul movement for a shipper. So again, don't feel bad. A lot to learn. Even this is why we have this podcast, because there's a lot of people that still are trying to get their arms around what intermodal is, and that's a lot of what we do, is try to do education.
Yeah, I kind of feel like sometimes when we're writing things or doing videos, podcasts, it's almost like you need to explain it every time a little bit, right?
Yes.
Give it a little definition. But anyway, so one other thing as we sort of shift into how you got into this and where we are now, it's sort of they dovetail. you came into the industry when it's been in sort of an undeniable slow period, and then when you first got in, I think there were a lot of people thinking that by now we'd be looking a little bit better, but maybe not so much yet. But how has that been in terms of, discussing it with your colleagues and with sources, how they've sort of explained and contextualized how it is right now?
Sure. And there is a lot of contextualization that has to happen when we're talking about these topics, because someone will explain something to me and then say, well, it's not doing that right now because nothing is happening right now. But I did have a few months when I first started here at Progressive Railroading where the tariff situation was not in place. But I'd say by the time November 2024 rolled around, everyone was already talking about what was going to happen. We were all thinking about what we're going to write, how we're going to cover this. I heard a lot from my colleagues about how much has changed. Also, since the pandemic, I feel like everything has been a new normal in the intermodal world, or in most industries, to be fair, since then. So it's almost like I came into this role in between two weird places in the industry. So I'm not exactly sure what the normal even is.
We're still looking for what the new normal is.
Is there a normal?
Yeah.
I don't know if there is.
So the piece that we sort of prompted this, as we talk about sort of this check-in point at around the halfway point of the year, you did a cover story recently in Progressive Railroading that was talking about how railroads and other key players in the intermodal industry are sort of approaching the now and the hopeful future, I guess, is sort of how it is put together. So tell us a little bit about the overall gist of that piece.
Sure. So that was our June cover story, and it was all about the intermodal markets. The first thing that I looked at for this article was the Intermodal Association of North America's Q1 reports about volume, and that was extremely helpful for me to try to get trends down, so I knew what to ask other people. So the first part of that article analyzes what those traffic trends are, and we get to explore a little bit of what's going on with the tariff situation. And then the later the latter half of that article goes a little bit more in depth into some partnerships that those Class 1 railroads are doing to try to gain more intermodal volume.
Yeah. So the volume piece, for instance, actually wasn't so bad at the beginning in that Q1 report, right?
Yeah, it actually wasn't bad at all. I mean, there was higher volume, I'd say, towards the very beginning of the year and going into, January, February. And then things started going downhill a little bit as tariffs started to be implemented. But there was definitely a surge from retailers front loading, trying to get as much of their stuff in as they could. I actually just listened to a media briefing from the Port of Los Angeles, and they had a local businessman on who said that he usually stocks 3 months of supply, and he ended up stocking about 5 months of supply, and even that was not enough. But yeah, the cargo volume coming in the very beginning of the year was not bad at all. And then I checked yesterday. I don't believe IANA has released their Q2 report yet. I'm awaiting that one, but I do know that due to the recently pushed back tariff effective dates, July had okay intermodal volume, but it's definitely going to drop again once that August 1 effective dates hits.
Yeah, we've had those waves of it, the pull forward and then a little pull, like calm down, not do anything, and then there's another delay. Let's pull some more forward. Yeah, we're still seeing that. I think even Los Angeles was saying recently that they've gone up a little bit again lately after they had been in a bit of a lull period.
Very true. And then, yeah, and I would call it more of an air pocket of everybody's trying to get wound up, get everything set, and then okay, well, we'll just settle down, and then we come back again. Yeah, I think May and June had some weeks that definitely were trending down, and the year over year numbers continue to trend down up pretty for about 6 to 8 weeks over the course of May and June. I think last week actually was the first week that it held constant. We stopped the slide against year to date, so that was a good sign for us. So yeah, it's but again, that's probably because of a pull forward and some thoughts that we're probably going to hit an air pocket, and how long is that air pocket going to last this time around?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you've been finding
Yeah.
with your colleagues and in the story as well?
Definitely. And there's also the aspect of, we're well past the point of back to school things being ordered, but now we're reaching the point where Christmas orders have to be in. And if you can't get those in before August 1st, then we might not have Christmas. So people are ordering ahead for sure before that August 1 date comes in. Now it's been, kind of like air pockets or waves with people ordering a bunch and then a lot of nothing, and then people ordering and then nothing.
Yeah, there comes a point where the pull forward is pulled too far forward, and then there's nothing else to do. But it was a good sign, as you were mentioning. If you're hearing from a business person who's done the 5-month pull forward and they're having to order again, that's a little bit of a positive sign there.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the other things about the volume question with intermodal that you pointed out in the piece was that West Coast is doing fine on the volume generally, but the Northeast in particular are a little bit different.
Yeah, it seems like forever ago at this point, but last year there was that dock worker strike on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast ports. I believe it lasted 3 days. But there were some shipments that were, rerouted because no one knows how long that strike is going to last. 3 days can mess a lot of things up. Another thing that I learned from executive director of IANA, Ann Reinke, is that the truck market has a lot more pull out on the East Coast because the distance from the East Coast to, say, the quote unquote center of the US or, say, Chicago is a lot shorter from that side than it is on the West Coast. So trucking has a bigger share of the transportation market out there, as more people are going to choose trucking for a short distance rather than a long distance where they might opt for something like rail.
Mm-hmm. So she mentioned when you were talking to Anne in the piece, not only about the strike situation and the labor unrest influencing the East Coast versus West Coast discussion, but there was also some concern in staffing issues. Maybe not right now, but if things are really picking up at the ports.
Sure. So it's faster to lay people off when you don't have work to do than it is to hire people when you do have work for them to do. If tariffs are causing retailers to not order as much, then you have fewer vessels to unload, you have fewer transloading lifts to complete, shorter trains to operate, for trucks to drive, all of that. And staffing becomes an issue if companies let go of employees due to lack of work, only for, say, a tariff date to get pushed back. People order more, and then you don't have enough staff at your ports to complete the work that needs to be done. And I haven't seen too much of this in the news yet. And of course, we do follow all those issues, even if it's not specifically rail related. We follow intermodal, port work, trucking. We do follow all those things on our Real Prime platform because that covers all freight news. But I haven't seen too much of it yet.
Yeah, that was something I noticed in your article that I haven't seen too much in other places. That concern that the capacity of the staff is going to be maybe negatively impacted when you do have these situations where the volume gets going again. I mean, You mentioned the pandemic as sort of a marker in the industry as well. And one of the things that was an issue was just not having enough resources to keep up with the demand.
Which is going to happen, and was also one of the reasons for the strike on the East Coast last year, is that with the U.S. ports not as dependent on automation, it's definitely dependent on people. So it's harder to, change direction if you don't have a lot of automation that's driving that port traffic and moving those containers in or out of the port.
Sure. And I do know that trucking is potentially going to face more of that kind of issue than rail necessarily. They don't have quite as long of a gap that they can wait between jobs.
Very true.
Yep. So we've touched on tariffs a little bit already, but in terms of what you've heard from folks in the industry, is there a way to sum up sort of the attitude around tariffs and the evolving trade policy that's sort of gone with it?
Everyone I know in the intermodal or freight industry in general, I would say it's fairly frustrated is the word that I would use with the tariff situation, with the way things are fluctuating. I believe there have been like 70 different announcements at this point for 70.
Sounds about right. Yeah. I haven't tracked
lost track.
Yeah.
I heard that from Port of Los Angeles. They were doing, like I said, a media briefing not too long ago about their situation that I sat in on. So frustrated is the word that I would use. It's too hard for people to keep track of. And it's also not only are really high tariffs difficult for, Americans to pay for, retailers are going to pass on that to the consumer. But since they change so much, it's so hard for businesses to plan anything that they're doing because they don't know what the price that they're going to have to pay for things is. So frustration and confusion, I would say, are the two words that I would use to describe the tariff situation at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was used in your piece, and I think I've seen this. I've used it in things that I've written. I've seen it in a lot of different articles. Uncertainty is another fun word to use.
Yeah.
But I think that one, doesn't Merriam-Webster usually do like the words of the year kind of thing? I think a couple of those words that we've just gone over might be in there.
I definitely think so. I know during the pandemic it was unprecedented. I think that 2025 it's going to be uncertain.
Yeah. So as we're talking short term, there's still the need to be planning for the future. So the other side of the article is really talking about what railroads are doing, maybe in spite of concerns about how the economy is going right now. So what are some of the things that the railroads are doing right now?
Sure. So the Class 1 railroads, these are massive companies. They don't necessarily have the time to postpone some of the major infrastructure updates that they have planned. These are things that are planned really far out. There are billions of dollars being spent every year on either building something new, a new interchange, or just replacing a bunch of track or fixing things. They are planning for not just next season. What's happening next season? Are there going to be tariffs next season? They're thinking, what's happening in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Is there going to be traffic here? Should we build this out? Our customers want this because they're expanding. And as carriers, they also need to be prepared for any potential influx in traffic. So again, with the tariffs changing, and we never truly know when something will change with the tariffs, if a trade deal is made tomorrow with China and tariffs shoot back down, there's going to be a lot of freight coming in, and the Class 1s have to be ready to carry that all off the dock because they can't have it stacked up at the dock either.
There's also a lot of partnership talk in addition to the sort of infrastructure piece, but with cross border being a possibility, take us through some of the partnerships that they're working on as well.
Sure. So one of the three partnerships or projects that I highlighted in the June cover story, specifically if you're talking cross border, the one I'm thinking of is the collaboration between CPKC or Canadian Pacific Kansas City and CSX. So they launched an interchange together in Alabama last December, and it is running currently. It has been interchanging traffic since last December, but I do know they have some infrastructure updates to make still, so it's not completely done. But the reason that they did this was so CXS customers can interchange to a CPKC train and get their traffic down into Mexico, and vice versa. Customers who are trying to take traffic from Mexico to the United States, they can interchange in Alabama and then keep on going out east without having to switch trains or do any, switch to a truck or anything like that. They can stay on a train the entire time.
Yeah, the other railroads have been it's sort of all across the class ones have been doing different cross border related partnership announcements. It feels like we've had one or two every couple months or so.
Yeah, it's been lasting really the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent. So so that'll still be interesting to follow as the cross border potential heats up, and again, tariffs certainly a factor in that too.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that one, and you said there were a total of 3 different ventures that you were covering. So what were the other 2?
Sure, yeah. So the other 2, one of them was on Union Pacific Railroad. So this project might actually be done now. They said it was opening in mid-July, and it is July 15 as we record this. So it's the Kansas City Intermodal Terminal. So again, scheduled to be open in mid-July. I spoke to them last in May. That might have changed. It's going to double their capacity in the Kansas City market. So essentially, their customers were looking for a service product, as they say, that could transport products from Los Angeles on the coast to Kansas City market in about 70 hours, which is pretty darn quick. So this facility will be transloading items from the trains to the trucks in the Kansas City area to get that cargo from the port to stores to the grounds as fast as possible.
That's one we're definitely taking advantage for customers, and we've already started moving that direction for them. So what the third one, so that one's really exciting for us. And the third one, not to say that the other one isn't, but we've had immediate hits on the opening of Kansas City. So the third one is what do you have there?
Yeah, so that one is a collaboration between BNSF Railway and Norfolk Southern. So both of those Class 1 railroads got feedback from their customers that they wanted an intermodal service between, or I should say a quicker intermodal service between the Pacific Northwest and the Chicago region. It's technically a 3-entity partnership, as the Northwest Seaport Alliance is involved too. The Seaport Alliance handles cargo for the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. So that's where the freight is arriving at those ports. The Seaport Alliance is now making sure that those get loaded onto a BNSF train as fast as possible. And that train is taking that freight all the way to Chicago, all the Chicago-bound traffic, of course, taking the Chicago-bound traffic all the way to a Norfolk Southern facility in Chicago. And what they were doing prior was Chicago-bound traffic with the rest of the traffic was being loaded on a BNSF train and taken down to Iowa, where it would sit in Iowa for about 48 hours. So that's a pretty long turnaround time. I believe it was about 240 extra miles added to that trip as well. So it'd get sorted in Iowa, and then it would get taken via train to Chicago. So just eliminating that by being able to go straight to Chicago and use the Norfolk Southern facility definitely saves a lot of time. And the customers, the clients who are using this service are really benefiting from the lack of dwell time, either at the dock, on the ground. It costs money to have your product just sitting on the ground somewhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, all of what you're highlighting, the infrastructure improvements, the partnerships, these are things that sort of address the service questions that sometimes people have when they're looking at rail.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about cross border, and then of course you just mentioned something very near to the other border of Canada. So one of the things you also covered, pivoting away from this article, but you recently covered the League of Railway Women's annual symposium, and there was some talk there about sort of the impacts of the recent elections. We talked about November here, obviously, but Canada just recently had one, and Mexico before us here in the U.S. So what were some thoughts about the new leadership in all three countries impacting the industry?
Sure. There was a really great panel at that symposium that featured a speaker, one person per North American country. We had Melissa Connolly from the AAR, or the Association of American Railroads. We had Melissa Cotton from CN for Canada, and then Fernando Ponce with CPKC in Mexico. And all of them work in the realm of government relations, so their insight was really good and definitely something that I would never have thought about. The government relations side of rail. We're seeing a lot of tension between lawmakers in the U.S. Businesses are struggling with the uncertainty thing, and a lot of U.S. businesses are hesitating to make large financial investments or expand their production. And since railroads rely on businesses needing them to transport their product, it's a little hard for railroads to plan where to put their new infrastructure if their customers aren't saying, this is where I'm expanding to. So hopefully, if the tariff situation, when the tariff situation cools off, that will be a little easier for the railroads to handle. In Canada, the re-election of the Liberal Party was definitely unexpected, according to our Canadian expert. Most people were expecting a switch to Conservative, but that didn't happen. Apparently, things are moving very swiftly through legislation over there, and the rail lobbyists are definitely being kept on their toes. And like you mentioned, Mexico had an election last year, and that also shook things up. There's a lot of concern right now about nearshoring, and railroads aren't hearing from their customers about if they're actually going to set up shop in Mexico because of the tariff situation in the U.S. So the tariff situation in the U.S. is definitely impacting our neighbors both up and down.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of a straight line between the tariffs and other trade policy and potentially what happened in Canada based on the change there in terms of who the prime minister is now and everything.
I would agree with that. And I believe Melissa also said that the re-election of the Liberal Party could have been a reaction to what occurred in the U.S.
So any other takeaways that you saw from that symposium? Because obviously it's anytime you have a chance to have a lot of people from the industry together discussing how things are going. Were there any other things that you sort of picked up as takeaways from there?
There was definitely kind of an understanding of the tension that is in the air in the freight and the intermodal industry. Someone would crack a joke about tariffs or the tension between different countries, and people would kind of nervously laugh. But it was a phenomenal event, genuinely. And I don't think the overall attitude was representative of how unsure some people might be. It was really interesting to see how many different types of positions there are in the rail industry. People were doing anything from managing a crew of, people who are on the ground, moving the trains around, moving the freight, doing the transloading, to water engineers. And I don't even truly know what that is. Don't even really know what she does. But also people were very, as I've said, helpful to someone who's new in rail, because they would always ask me, oh, how long have you been at Progressive Railroading? And I'd say under a year. And they would say, oh, you have so much to learn. I was like, I know I do. Please tell me more about the job so I can learn more about the industry. But people were very, very nice there.
Is that kind of a goal that you heard there as well, to sort of cultivate that next generation of all these different types of positions, as you said?
Definitely. And that's such a big topic in rail right now, too. I think there were multiple people from organizations that specifically focus on getting younger people and more diverse workforce in the rail industry, since it is so predominantly male and also usually a generational type of industry. People go into rail because their parents were in it or their grandfather was in it, and getting new people in rail has proven to be pretty difficult. So it is, I think, growing and becoming easier. There's more of these events popping up. There's more organizations or departments popping up that are focused on recruiting young people for rail.
It all kind of ties in with what you said at the very beginning. The awareness issue is kind of a big piece of the whole puzzle.
Definitely. I mean, I never anticipated covering railroads as a journalist. That's not what I pictured myself doing. I went to school for communication. I was planning on doing, daily news reporting for a while, and I kind of found this job just as a regular job listing and applied because it sounded interesting, and I had no clue how expansive this world could be, and there's so much to learn.
Yeah, and that's a good little ad for other communications and journalism students who are maybe looking down the road or down the train tracks,
down
down
the
rails,
tracks.
as another option. Yeah.
Yeah, B2B is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say B2B or industrial communication is definitely something that is worth pursuing. There's a lot out there that should be talked about more.
Well, Bridget, thanks very much for doing this today. Tell people where they can find more of your work. Obviously, the cover story and any other articles and pieces that you're working on.
Sure. So the cover story can be found on Progressive Railroading. I'm going to make sure I get the exact address right real quick. Okay. The cover story can be found on progressiverailroading.com. It is under our magazine tab. You do have to go back to the archives, but that's okay. And then a lot of the other stuff that I work on is under our Rail Prime platform. So Rail Prime is our digital subscription where we do most of our original reporting. And that platform covers any type of logistics, freight movement. So that's all individual reporting or unique reporting by the journalists here at Progressive Railroading.
And you just go to progressiverailroading.com for any of that if they want to subscribe to that as well.
Yeah, so Progressive Railroading is our main website, and it should be pretty easy to navigate to Rail Prime from there. And you do get a free article per month, I believe, is what you can do right now. Sometimes it changes, but right now you get one free article a month.
All right, Bridget, great. Thanks very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So this was kind of a two-pronged interview because we wanted to do the check-in on the industry, and she had a pretty comprehensive piece on it, talking to a couple of people that we've talked to on this very podcast, and also Bridget gives us another perspective. We were talking before we actually got on here about how a lot of our guests have been in the industry quite a while. So it's interesting to speak with somebody who is newer to the field, get her impressions on that as well.
Yeah, it's fun to see someone as young as she is getting excited about railroading and intermodal and trains. As she said, it tends to be more of a generational type industry, which is interesting in and of itself. But it's great to get new blood in here, make us think, us old timers that have been around for decades, an opportunity to listen to what they have to say and learn from them. I mean, we can learn as much from them as they can learn from us. So it was a great. I enjoyed the conversation and I liked the twist near the end where we talked a little bit about education and students and potential places you can go with this industry.
Yeah. The various jobs. I think it's come up here and there before, but it's something that people don't really think about necessarily, that there's a lot of different things you can do to work in the field.
Oh, absolutely.
So for that article and more, you can find links in the description. And again, we thank Bridget again for joining us today. You can also find more from us on our YouTube channel. Logistics.com is the website. The YouTube channel is the Intermodal Logistics channel. And that's where this podcast is. You can also find the podcast on any podcast platform you like. We encourage you to comment, rate, review. All of those interactions are more than welcome. And you can also email us at podcast@intechlogistics.com for more. For Rick Lagore, I'm Kevin Baxter. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.